Hi, this is Dr. Nick. I'm the incrementalist here with incremental insights for better business, better health.
And I'm Fred Goldstein with Accountable Health, and we're working together helping companies, universities, and others reopen during the COVID pandemic. Nick, we're sitting here approaching the amazing Thanksgiving holiday. Usually families get together. We usually have a big gathering. Obviously, things are different this time of year, but also we have universities that are sort of unloading their students. What's going on and what should people be considering?
Well, first of all, just so that you know, Thanksgiving is a holiday for this immigrant. He didn't know the first year he was here and drove in to New York wondering where all the traffic was at the time. True story. And now, absolutely my most favorite holiday of all times. But of course, it represents a huge challenge in this current circumstance. We have guidance that essentially says don't get together. So, in those instances where that's possible, so where you have and people travel huge amounts, I mean, it was undeniably the busiest travel day on the roads, maybe not the oceans. There wasn't much of that going on, but certainly in the air. Don't know about trains, but you couldn't get a seat. So that's not happening, or it shouldn't be happening. So bringing people together. I think there was a survey that suggested that people were planning big get-togethers. But from a family standpoint, there are some sort of mandatory or almost required things here. If you have college age children, they're being sent back home by many of these colleges. So, how do you mitigate and how do you deal with that? Well, um, do what I'm doing, which is, provide counsel and advice to those college students to be extra careful about isolation. The prevailing piece of wisdom that I have for them is consider everybody that you interact with at this point to be infected and treat accordingly. So that's all the things that we know work. We've established face coverings, physical distancing, and obviously cleanliness. And then doing everything that you can to sort of isolate yourself from any potential risks prior to coming home. And then obviously getting home, you've got to consider if you can sit in a car on your own, that would be great. If you're going to drive with somebody, hopefully you can drive with somebody that's part of your bubble that you came from and, do so. But if you can't, gosh, if you're in the car, have the windows down if that's possible. Wear a face covering in the car. I know these are difficult things, but you want to reduce the risk and you don't want to be the reason that COVID-19 is brought home. And then when you come home, make those assumptions, assume risk and behave accordingly. Can we factor in testing if it's available? I know some of the colleges are doing a fantastic job and saying, let's test these individuals, albeit this is imperfect. This is just about narrowing or reducing the risk. If I test you Monday, you could still get it on Tuesday, or might not have been positive on that Monday. So it's not a definitive. It doesn't stop you or preclude you from having the risk associated with that possible disease. And then, uh, as you get together, think about it and have the minimized get together. I know you, Fred, had a very specific circumstance and you dealt with it in, appropriate ways with your particular instance.
Yes, we did. We actually had, my son had a close exposure and was supposed to quarantine. And we felt it was safer and better for him to quarantine here versus in the facility he was in that had the outbreak. And he came down, straight down, went straight into a room through a back door and quarantined for 14 days. And I think I saw him one time uh, during that whole time when he was out cooking on the barbecue in the backyard. And actually, a funny story. I was actually working on a Zoom call like we're doing now, and I looked over and through the window I could see this person walking in the backyard, and I literally jumped up and said, "Excuse me, I got to check. Someone's in my backyard." I walked over to the door and looked, and it was him just walking out in the back for a minute, and then. But yeah, it's a situation that you've got to consider, and also all of those good points that you made and great advice for people when they're thinking about coming back, and really how should they should they really try to minimize some of that interaction with those first couple of days and do some safer things in their house than they might have considered with the people who are in there full time?
Yeah, I think you've got to think about each of the instances. I mean, there is no zero risk. And, I've quoted a friend of mine on this repeatedly. When I tell you to wear a seatbelt in the car, I can't stop you from having a car accident and, all the potential negative consequences. But I still tell you to wear a seatbelt. So everything is couched under those terms. It is about reducing risk. So if you feel that there's potentially higher risk with individuals, think about it in the way that you did. And in your specific instance, you were following the quarantine regulations. You isolated him. I think you had a whole camping setup outside to sort of make sure that you weren't. You may not be able to go to those extremes, but you reduce the physical distance. You try and include as much external air. I think we're all, if we're not getting more fresh air than we did last year, there's a problem. And that's all a good thing anyway. Fresh air is a good thing, but that's probably one of the best mitigation measures. Cleanliness, communal. If you have somebody that's outside of the bubble, maybe they don't sit, close to everybody else. They're physically removed, and you don't congregate to get food. So this family style. So thinking about all of those things and applying as much mitigation as possible. You can do this safely. You can bring people back. You just minimize that to the bare minimum that's appropriate for your circumstances.
Great suggestions, great suggestions. And let me just add that it was fantastic at the end of day 14 to actually see my son face to face and give him a high five for doing so well back there.
And I just want to say that I was on the Zoom call when that happened, and you stepped off the Zoom call to go and greet him out of
I
quarantine.
heard the
So,
door open for the first time in
yeah,
14 days. Yep. So amazing time.
fantastic. So, in summary, I would say, this is all about minimizing risk. We understand what's possible and what we can do. We can work at this. I'm not here to make judgments on who you bring together. I think everybody has to make those judgments in the context of their world, their family, make those choices, but minimizing the number to the absolute minimum and minimizing contact with potentially people that are outside of the bubble that can bring that infection into your home and your family and friends. That's something that you don't want to do. And we can be smart about this. And then add in testing. We're going to have vaccination. I think that we'll see that at some point in the reasonably near future. All good news. But this is going to be a different Thanksgiving. But it doesn't mean to say we can't celebrate and be thankful for the year 2020 that gave us telehealth and telemedicine. It gave us the Nick and Fred show.
Oh, I did. That's right. That's so true. So one more thing to add before we finish, we have this upcoming new feature we're started on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, COVID Insights to Action, a discussion group. And what we'll be doing, Nick and myself and Dr. Luis Saldana will be a 30-minute session on Zoom that we invite people to, and we'll do a little bit of discussion of some things that we hear about, and we'll allow other people to participate and ask us questions. So we're looking forward to that. And if you get a chance, you should join us.
Chance to ask questions. You must have burning questions coming up. Your opportunity to ask us what we think and what the science says. This is all about science and all about the supporting evidence, making the best available choices.
Absolutely. So join us this Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time for COVID Insights to Action, a discussion group. And with that, this is Fred Goldstein with Accountable Health. Thanks so much for the insights for Thanksgiving, Nick, and looking forward to next week.
And this is Dr. Nick. I'm the incrementalist here with incremental insights for better business, better health.